Hello, welcome to the channel. Please consider liking and subscribing if you have not. And if you have, then let's keep going with the video. Or if you haven't, we're still going with the video. So for this one, I wanted to do a mega streaming guide. So it's the holidays, or if you don't celebrate the holidays, it's, November and December, and it's probably cold where you are, I think, most places in the world. Figured I'm gonna make you a huge streaming guide so you can find something to watch, because sometimes we just want to find something to watch and, we just want to get some recs and we don't want to have to scroll through Netflix endlessly watching trailers, which I do more than I should. So I thought what I would do is do a couple categories for you guys. So I made a whole list. Now this isn't exactly a stereotypical category list. I was inspired by Netflix's trailers, which are like fantasy, action, anime. But we're gonna put the anime in with the different topics, and we're gonna have anime and live action, and also just like some cool international shows that like are French or Nordic I have in here. Stuff like that. So we're gonna go, I have a very wide array of interests. Now I will say, if you're watching my channel, you're probably like me. My absolute favorite genres are fantasy and sci-fi and also some history, and I also love genre mashups. So like, you got all three of those in there, that's amazing. So here's the categories. We've got high quality fantasy. So fantasy that I think is of the utmost quality for a reason. High quality science fiction. Epic genre mashup. So this is like, the show's really amazing. And it's like, I'm obsessed with it because not only is it one genre, but it's several, and they did it in such a cool, creative way that I'm putting it in this category. I couldn't just put it in one category. We have has a vibe. Now, has a vibe, I'm not trying to sound cool. I know I'm old, I'm like 30 almost. So, I don't know all the lingo, but I just liked the way it sounded, so we're going with it. Now, has a vibe means that there was lots of world building. The overall show is good, but it draws you in from the atmosphere, so it has a vibe. Anyways, then we're gonna go for when you need a good cry, but the show is also amazing. So the show's really good, but you want something that you're gonna feel things. We have the category makes you think. So either it's making you think long after, for some reason, it's making you think about society today, or it's making you think literally during the show, like, this person's doing this, or it's just like a very cognitive focused show, if that makes sense. We have a few more categories, so thanks for sticking with me. We have high quality drama. So it's a very high quality show. I love it. Nothing but good things. Just felt like it fit in best with drama. High quality, historically inspired, because we know most history fiction shows aren't necessarily historically accurate, and I wasn't going to go through and figure out which ones were and which ones weren't. We're just putting them all in historically inspired. All right. Mysteries. Pretty self-explanatory. Quirky comedies. Or just comedies, but I tend to like quirky ones, so we're putting quirky comedies. Cool international action. So like, there's stuff happen. Either it's literally an international show, or there's stuff happening that's very internationally focused. For when you want to chill. So you're stressed. Maybe you had to hang out with some people for Thanksgiving. They stressed you out, or maybe not. Maybe you're stressed about buying presents, or maybe you don't celebrate those holidays and you're just stressed from work, life, I don't know. The point is, I watched these shows and they just made me feel very relaxed. So they weren't always necessarily like the highest quality, even though they were pretty good, but I felt chill. For when you want to be entertained, this is like, was the show the highest quality show I've ever seen? No. Was it extremely entertaining? Yes. And sometimes we watch entertainment just to be entertained. So that's what that category is for. And last but not least, we have history documentaries. I am assuming most of you probably don't watch history documentaries, which is why it's at the end, so you don't have to watch if you don't want to. But that's what it's for. So, we'll start with high quality fantasy. Now, so I don't make this video insanely long, I'm probably going to try to do sort of like a very short elevator pitch. We'll see how that goes. I'm not exactly great at keeping things brief, but we'll try. Alright, so high quality fantasy. First one, Re:Zero, Starting Life in Another World. Now this is fantasy, also a little bit of horror and psychology, but I'm putting it in fantasy because the title is Starting Life in Another World. You got this guy, his name is Subaru. He had a hard life he had depression in the real world. He was killed, and this is an isekai, but it's a really good isekai, and it is about his sort of he has this power that he didn't know he had, where if he does die, he gets to start over from almost like a save point. Now that sounds kind of like, oh, it sounds like a game, but I promise you it's like actually really interesting and good. So if you liked Steins Gate, I recommend trying Re:Zero because it has some similar vibes. Next we have Avatar: The Last Airbender. I didn't watch this until 2020. My brothers and lots of people I knew watched it as a kid. I actually did not, but I'd heard of it. Great show. Season 1, is a little more episodic, but if you stick with it, I promise you it is so worth it. And Zuko and Uncle Iroh are my favorite characters. If you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not seen the show, what I will say is there's actually great characters, great world building. I mean, people literally make water and fire, and each nation has its own vibe. And yeah, it's just really good. It's really good. The Dragon Prince. This is on Netflix. This was actually made. There's a creator or a writer, I forget which, but like a head creator is from Avatar, and it's got the same vibe, like in points, and very interesting. There's several nations. You have a really cute like little boy and his older brother, and they live in this castle, and the reason it's called the Dragon Prince is they are, trying to save the Dragon Prince, and that's all I'll say without spoilers. So then we have The Witcher, which is a much different vibe than everything I've talked about so far. You have this guy, Gerald. He literally basically works for a living to kill monsters. And the vibe is really cool in the show, and I highly recommend it. His Dark Materials. I'm obsessed with this show. I don't hear enough about it from people on the internet or anything, but it's so good. The opening is so good. The show itself is so good. I mean, the world is so good. Everyone has sort of like a familiar in this world, like an animal. And they're very important. The animal is almost like their emotions or their connection to their child self, you would call it almost, or like their inner self, if that makes sense. And as they grow up, these familiars, if you will, develop with the people. But there's a larger world. There's a lot more going on that's at stake. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's this cool kind of like dark academia vibe if you're into that also. So, Game of Thrones. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but we're going to have a category called essential viewing. That means I think these seasons you absolutely have to watch. Seasons after, you choose if you want to watch. I mean, you can choose obviously from the beginning if you want to watch. But that's what we're doing. So I'd say for Game of Thrones, season 1 through 6 are essential viewing. They're very good, very well done. Season 7 and 8. That's all I have to say about that. But the show is worth watching. It's a great show, and the early seasons are some of the best television I've ever seen in my life. I've watched, I think, Game of Thrones, like the early seasons, like 3 times in my life because it's so good. Good Omens. This is one of my favorite shows of all time. It is a satire and a parody. Very quirky and interesting. It has these two famous guys. I'll put pictures because I forget their names off the top of my head. Great British actors. Really funny. It's about an angel and a demon and sort of their relationship. And they are, I grew up Catholic and read the Bible and all that fun stuff. And if you also know a lot about Christianity, I think you'll find it fascinating. Or if you don't, because yeah, it kind of goes into the story of Revelation. So the story of the end times and how do the angels and demons handle that. But again, it's a parody, so if you want something serious, maybe don't watch it. The Ancient Mage's Bride. I love this show. It's interesting because it's kind of like a Japanese take on a lot of British or just like Germanic or Western European folklore kind of, which is really cool and very, very creative show. It's about this, and it deals with a lot of dark topics, which I love, like depression and other things like that. It's about this girl named Chisei. She gets bought. She puts herself up for auction. She's very depressed. Puts herself up for auction at this really horrible underground situation. Gets bought by this guy Elias. And he's like a skeleton looking guy. And he's a mage, and he says, "You're gonna be my apprentice." And she's like, "What is going on?" And that's how it starts, and it's a great, great, great show. I've been reading the manga too. Volume 10. Told you I'd update you guys on the manga from my other video, so there you go. So I'm trying not to put any shows that are like super new fall season shows, but unless I absolutely think there's pretty much no way I'm not gonna love it all the way through. So there's some fall season shows that could be on here, but I'm not putting them yet, except for a few. One of them is Ranking of Kings. If you haven't seen this yet, it reminds me of a dark fairy tale. It's so good. It has this really cute, bubbly exterior in the animation and the vibe of the show. The character's so cute, the main character. But underneath the surface, there's a lot of darkness and there's a lot of just dark emotions. The main character is deaf and mute, and people are not nice to him, at the beginning. But there's a lot more to it than even just that. It's about sort of this king, this future king, right? And he wants to prove himself. He goes, "I'm deaf and I'm mute, but I'm not going to let that stop me." And I love that. So that's where we are with that one. And my last high quality fantasy choice is Yona of the Dawn, which I know I don't think anyone on my channel watches Yona of the Dawn, but I don't care because you should watch it. Please watch it. It's okay if you don't. I will accept it. But seriously, it's a great show. I don't think people know what it's about. It's about this girl. She's a princess. And yes, at the beginning, she's a little annoying. She lives a very luxurious life. But there is a coup in the castle, and this is all episode 1, so I'm spoiling episode 1. I'm sorry, but I gotta get your interest in the show. Her cousin, who she's decided she's in love with, which I guess some people fall in love with their cousins. What can you do? He murders her father, who's the king, and she was like literally about to go confess to her father she was in love with her cousin, who she wanted to like get married and he would become king. And he murders her father, and then he tries to murder her. And she's like, well, this isn't great, obviously. So it's about this story of her becoming a fully independent person. And basically, she explores the kingdom, and she learns a lot about maybe like some issues in the kingdom that she didn't know about. So it's a lot about sort of about class too, and about how this person who was sheltered didn't know a lot of the issues that the common people faced. And it also has love, and there are lots of guys in it, but the reason is she's actually trying to recruit them because They are dragon warriors, which is a whole thing. So there's a bit of fantasy in it, which is what I was saying, is they're dragons. So it's not like what people, I think, assume. It's not like, oh, there's just a bunch of guys who are in love with Yona. It's more like she has one love interest. Maybe you could argue one or two of them maybe have a crush on her. But the bigger picture is more of this sort of epic travel fantasy. And I absolutely love it. It's so good. And I wish there was a season 2. And that's all I have to say about it. All right. So if you watch it, maybe there'll be a season 2. Fingers crossed. It's okay if you don't. Sorry if I'm being too pushy, guys. All right, on to high quality science fiction. Number 1, 86. If you want to know what it's about, watch my video about it, because that goes into a lot more depth than I can go into here. It's so good. It's about this girl, Lena, and she works for the Republic of San Mongolia. This republic is supposed to be a utopia, but it's not. They have these drones fighting for them, and these drones are actually people, but they've decided to classify them as not people. So if you like Attack on Titan, go watch 86. It's so good. The end. Okay, next we have the OA. This is a really weird show. I loved it. It was so weird. It has some other weird sci-fi elements, but basically, and mystery, because this girl shows up and she tells everyone, you know, it's kind of psychological. She says she was missing for years, and she's telling everyone that she like traveled through time, and she like experienced like this weird lab thing and all this stuff, and people are like, can we believe this girl? Has she gone crazy because she was kidnapped for so many years and we finally found her? What's the deal? So it's about that, but it's about a lot more. Season 1 and 2 are amazing. Very, very, very interesting show. Very weird. If you're looking for something that you're gonna be like, my mind is blown, this is like so different from anything I've ever seen, go check out the OA. There's 2 seasons on Netflix. Just know there's only 2. It didn't get renewed for season 3, so I honestly think it's worth enjoying it for what it is, even though season 2 does end on a cliffhanger, I will warn you. All right, number 3, Westworld. Season 1 is what I would call essential viewing. Season 2, it was fine. I watched it. I wasn't that impressed. It was good, but Season 3, I didn't finish. It's a good quality show still, but season 1 was amazing. I couldn't stop watching season 1. It's basically about a bunch of robots that are in a theme park, and people are going to visit these robots, but these are sentient beings. And these sentient robots are being forced to do all these horrible things to appease the darker side of human nature. And I think it's a very interesting philosophical show in that way, in season 1 especially. So highly recommend season 1 of Westworld. It's so good. The rest you can decide. Next, Watchmen, the show. I haven't actually seen the movie, but the show is really good. It talks about the Tulsa Massacre, which I actually did not know about until watching the show, and I think it's important to know about American history like that. Also, the science fiction is really good in it. It has a really just great... It's a slow burn. So if you don't like... It took me a while to get into it. If you don't like slow burns, you might not like it. But if you don't mind, it's really good. Really great. Very atmospheric, but the characters are also really good. There's some mystery to it, and... just a really well-made show. Next we have Upload. This is a much different vibe than a lot of the shows I've talked about on science fiction. Actually, I think it's the first one, maybe the only one on my list that isn't serious. It's called Upload. So if you want a more comedic, it still has dystopian tones, but a more comedic show, Upload is pretty good. I think it was written by the same people as The Office, or the creators. It was something like that. I really enjoyed Upload. I watched it in like a week. It's about this girl. She works at this company, and this guy, and And he basically, what happens in this world is people, when they die, can be uploaded into like a database, but it's like this perfect utopian world where they can eat whatever they want and experience whatever they want. But you have to have a certain amount of money to be able to have like a really nice life after death. And the people who either don't get uploaded, or they go to like a really low quality life. And I don't think they have a say on if they can like be unuploaded, so it's kind of interesting. And it kind of talks too about like how the wealthy would handle that, which is interesting. It's a thought-provoking show, but it also has a lot of comedy. So if you're looking for a more lighthearted sci-fi, this is definitely the one to watch. Next show is The Handmaid's Tale. Season 1 is essential viewing. I read the book. Season 1's also great. It's about a dystopian society where women basically have no rights at all. It's very depressing. As a woman, it's very depressing. And it's pretty crazy because the author, Margaret Atwood, actually based everything off of things that have happened in real life. So a society somewhere in the past or now has had these lack of rights for women, and there's lots of action in it and mystery, and it's a very interesting dystopian show, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I also watched season 2 and 3, and for me it's still good, but season 1 is the one like is the essential viewing. Attack on Titan. I put this in sci-fi. I almost put it in genre mashup, but I kind of feel like it's maybe I should have put it in genre mashup, but I like it in sci-fi because to me it's a dystopian more than anything else. What would this dystopian world be like, kind of a thing. Basically, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely another weird premise, but it's cool. There is horror too. If you are squeamish, it may not be the best show for you, but it's so good. I'm a little squeamish, and I just sometimes but basically, you have this boy Aaron and this girl Mikasa, and they live inside a wall. And one day, this really big, they live in this world where they're like the prey, and there's these big titans. They're like big giants, and they're really creepy looking, and they live outside of this wall. And so they're kind of like, it's almost like a cat and mouse kind of thing. The titans are like the cats, and the people are like the mice. And it makes you think about what would it be like to be a human and not be on the top of the food chain. There's a lot more to the show, but I don't want to give spoilers, so that's like a little overview for you. Next we have Akudama Drive. Great show, 12 episodes, you're looking for something short. Another dystopian society, but this one's a lot more technology focused, and it focuses on a bunch of criminals, which is kind of interesting, and their heist. So got a heist in there too. It has a really great world building. The characters, some of them are really good, some of them are a little more flat, but I think it was worth putting in high quality science fiction. Next we have Seraph of the End. This is another one I almost put in fantasy, but I feel like it's more of a dystopia, so we're putting it in sci-fi. There are some vampires, and they have decided basically to take over the human world, and they do. They kill everyone who is over the age of, is it 18, with a virus. And we start out with our two characters, Yu, like YU, that confused me for a while, and Mika. And they're adoptive brothers, and also there's a bunch of adoptive siblings as well. Yu is an orphan, and they get taken in by the vampires, and a lot goes down. It's a very creative show, very interesting. Everything from the weapons to the world itself is very inventive. It's animated by Wit Studio, who also animated Attack on Titan. And I keep forgetting to mention this show, which is crazy. This is another one I got the manga for. It's a great show. Highly recommend. A really cool take on vampires where they're more of like an enemy. Next we have Vivi Fluoride's Eye Song. This is about an AI named Vivi. She is really smart. She's like the first super smart AI of her kind. And there's this guy, is it Matsumoto? I always say his name wrong. He's a little robot, and he comes back as a bear originally from the future, and he tells her that AIs are in 100 years going to basically murder people. And so her and this bear team up and decide that they are going to try to prevent that from happening. And it's a great show. 10 out of 10. All right, a few more. We got Steins Gate, which I technically on this channel you've only seen me react to the first episode. I will post the next one soon. But I finished it in real life, I'm from the future, I guess you could say. Loved it. Steins Gate 0, I'm watching now. This is another one where I made an exception, even though I haven't finished it. I'm on episode like 15, and I don't see me changing my mind. If you've seen, see, I don't want to spoil Steins Gate, so I'll leave that for another video, but I'll tell you more about Steins Gate 0 in the future. If you haven't seen either of them, it's about time travel. It's this guy, this like, I think he's high school, maybe like 18-year-old, something like that. Him and his friends, they invent a time machine. And, you know, very early on, he meets this person who at a convention or something, she's like a very young professor, she's like 18, and she's presenting a science paper, and she's brutally murdered. And they're like, what? So she's brutally murdered, they invent a time machine, and things go down from there. Last but not least, we have The Mandalorian. This is like my only Disney rec. Sorry. Anyways, so we've got The Mandalorian. Probably, this is like what I always wanted Star Wars to be, you know? Like it's not as good as some of the other shows on this list, but it's a very enjoyable watch, and I think that they got the world really well and the vibe really well, and Baby Yoda's so cute. So, there you go. Alright. If you like Star Wars, watch The Mandalorian. Now we have epic, genre, mashup. Let's start with number 1, which is Noragami. I put this in epic genre mashup because it's, I don't know, it has so many different elements. It's kind of a sci-fi, it's kind of a fantasy, it's kind of a comedy, it's kind of a romance. It's like everything, but it's done so well. You have this girl, she saves a god, but she gets hit by a bus in the process, and she turns into like a half human, half spirit. And you get to see her and this god and their relationship, and you learn all about like the world of gods, and the main god, Yato, he's kind of like a lost god, so he's not as like, he's not with the in crowd of the gods, if that makes sense. He's he doesn't have a shrine, he doesn't have like any of the cool god stuff that he wants. And so he calls himself delivery god. And he goes and he delivers different things to people, and so there's this comedic element, but also he does help out and get rid of evil spirits, or I guess they don't really have evil spirits in Japan, do they? It's spirits who are influencing people to do things. They're influencing their worst side. So like someone who's depressed might be influenced to do something not so great. Someone who, you know, wouldn't normally bully might be influenced by a spirit. So Yato gets rid of these spirits. It's a very good show. Very, very good. And to the point where I have the manga that I'm also reading. Alright, next we have Outlander. To me, this is an underrated show. I know lots of people watch it, but I think it's marketed to be like a romance, and there is romance, but I would call it more of a history, sci-fi, fantasy mashup, because it's about this girl named Claire, or this woman. She gets married, she's on her honeymoon in Scotland, and she gets sent back in time to like Scotland way back in the day. And that's why it's called Outlander, because she's British, so she has to deal with being from the future and try to fit in with all these Scottish people, and it goes into the Scottish culture at the time. There is romance, but there's also a lot of great character development. You really get the feel of what Scotland was like at the time. And this is another one where I'd say actually season 1 and 2 are the essential viewing, but I've watched all the seasons. It gets a great vibe. The author of the books originally has like a PhD in history, and you really get the vibe of the time period. It's really cool. But also there's lots of interesting drama. You see sort of like what people dealt with at the time, and there's action, light on the fantasy and the sci-fi, but it is there. Great show. Da Vinci's Demons. Love this show. It has an interesting vibe. Season 1 is the essential viewing. Season 2 and 3 are... Season 2's not as good. Season 3, not as good. Season 1, amazing. Leonardo da Vinci, and it takes some liberties with him and his inventions, but he invents all this really cool futuristic stuff using stuff from like that time period. There's some fantasy elements too in it, and he helps oh god, what is that famous family in Italy? I'll put the name, Medici's. He helps the Medici's, or he works to, work for the Medici's and make stuff, and there's lots of politics and intrigue, and it's just a great show. And Da Vinci's not a very serious character. He's kind of a quirky, fun. I was just talking about Steins Gate. If you like Okabe, I think you'll like the main character in Da Vinci's Demons, and vice versa. Next is Bungo Stray Dogs. This is a cool show. I haven't finished it yet either. I'm on season 3. But it has sort of like these literary elements and some moments of some serious, emotional growth. It also has mafia members. It has a lot of like sort of sci-fi fantasy elements too, because everyone has these different powers, but they're connected to like different authors and literary figures, mostly in Japanese, but there's actually a lot of American as well influence, which is interesting. It's about this guy and Atsushi and Dazai, who's my favorite character, and a bunch of other people at this mystery detective agency, and they solve crimes. So there's a lot going on. It's a fun show. Also has serious moments. There are a couple episodes I found to be filler that I kind of wanted to skip. But overall, I think it's a really fun genre mashup, so I had to include it. Last but not least is Case Study of Vanitas. I put this in epic genre mashup because it's got romance, it's got fantasy, it's got mystery, and it's got sci-fi. There's all sorts of stuff going on. You have these two. There's this guy, Vanitas, and basically vampires have been getting corrupted by what people have been saying is the blue vampire. And turns out, at least, Vanitas is trying to cure these vampires. So there's a lot of intrigue going on of what's actually going on, who is Vanitas. But there's also a lot of like romance elements and drama as well. Highly recommend. If you want to learn more about that show, you can watch my video on that. All right, now we're on to Has a Vibe, which is like the world building is great. Characters, maybe not as great, or it may be that it gets repetitive, or different things like that, but I still really loved it. But the thing that stood out to me the most for these shows is, and I think if you're looking for this, you should watch these, is the atmosphere. It gets you really invested in the atmospheric vibe of the show. All right, so we have Shadow and Bone. Now, that's based off of, I don't know if you can see in my background, Crooked Kingdom right there. Yeah, that book is in this show. And several others. I actually did not read the original books, but I have read Crooked Kingdom and Six of Crows. And I can say for those, they did a great job. The show, the characters are kind of hit or miss. Some of them are really good, some of them aren't. But I would say the overall vibe is more what makes the show. It kind of has a good, like, spooky Halloween vibe. If you like... Alright, next we have Stranger Things. Season 1, essential viewing. Season 2 and 3, I feel like get repetitive. So that's what I guess I'm trying to say about Stranger Things is it has the cool 80s vibe. I do like that, though I was born in the 90s, so I don't really quite have the nostalgia. I have some of it, because early 90s, you know, I was like 2, but it has some of the stuff. So I thought it was a cool vibe, though. I like the sort of like light horror elements, and I hadn't really seen a show like that. It reminds me of E.T., which I'm sure lots of people have said. Just a great show, for season 1 at least, and I'd still say it's good. It just depends on what you like, but it's definitely got that. It's got like a Luigi's Mansion atmosphere, if that makes sense. Next, we have Ragnarok. Now, this is a Nordic show, and I recommend watching it in the Nordic language with the subtitles. It's fun. It's not the best show I've ever seen, but I really like the vibe of it, especially season 1. I binge watched season 1. Season 2 wasn't as good, but it's just cool. It's very creative, and if you liked, you know, any of the Thor Marvel movies, I think it goes into the Nordic folklore in a cool way, and it shows how Thor and, you know, Loki and all those people would have like kind of lived if the mythology was more real to reality. So it's kind of like a light fantasy, I'd call it. It's good. It's interesting. Carnival Row is next. This is a show, there's mystery, which is cool, that is like a murder mystery this guy's trying to solve. And it's about this world where fairies are discriminated against. And so the main character girl, played by Cara Delevingne, is a fairy. Do I think her acting was the best in the world? No. But I thought it was okay. And Orlando Bloom's the main guy, and he's a good actor, so it kind of works. I thought, though, the show stood out to me more for the atmosphere and the vibe. I thought the costumes were well done. The vibe of the world was really well done. And I did really enjoy the story, and some of the other characters I thought, too, were really interesting that were side characters. Whew, so there's that one. All right. Now we have A Discovery of Witches. This is another really atmospheric show. Based off novels. I didn't read these books though. It's a really fun kind of Halloween-y fall show. So if you're still missing Halloween or whatever, it's kind of cool. It just has a lot of like mythology in it. There's vampires, there's demons, I think, right? Yeah. And there's witches, there's you know, all sorts of fun stuff. It really does remind me, people have said this before and I agree, of an adult version of Twilight. There's romance, obviously, too. But it's just a real fun show. I enjoyed it. It's not the highest quality in terms of, at least the script, the way it was written, in my opinion. Oh, and it also has kind of that dark academia vibe, too. But it's a good show. It's fun, I guess, is the better word. And last but not least, we have Jujutsu Kaisen. Yes, I did put an anime on this one too, of course. Jujutsu Kaisen, I get why it was hyped up. I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I did think that they got the atmosphere in a really cool way. And there's a lot of like just cool ideas around the show. Like, I think the academy is very interesting, and you know, he ate the fingers and all that, and how that works. And if you haven't seen the show, it's about this kid. He's in high school and he accidentally eats a demon's finger and he gets powers. And then he has to help fight off spirits. And it's a fun show. I mean, I watched the whole way through. And there are some pretty difficult moments. There's some good character building. And the ending of the beginning of season 1, oh my god. Like, the song is so fun. So you should watch it for that too. Could have put the song on Has a Vibe. Anyway, oh, it is on Has a Vibe, that's right. Well, that's why it is on Has a Vibe. Alright, now we're on to For When You Need a Good Cry, but the story is also amazing. Number 1, Violet Evergarden. If you want to know about Violet Evergarden, you can watch my video. But to give you a short overview, it is about a child soldier. She survived the war, And now she has to deal with all of the PTSD and issues that come with being a child soldier. And it's really, really, really good. Next, we have True Your Eternity. I have a video coming out about that. If you can't tell, I really like this genre. If you guys have recs for this genre, let me know, because I only have 3 on here. True Your Eternity, I have a video coming out that will explain to you about that. It's a very good show. It's about, it sounds weird, but it's about an orb. And the orb is collecting like data on the human experience, but it's so much more than that, which is why I recommend you watch my video on it, because I can't describe it in such a short time here. Next, we have Fruits Basket. I do have a video on Fruits Basket, but it's analyzing sort of like the structure of different relationships. So it's very spoilery. If you guys want, let me know and I can make a video about more of the general what Fruits Basket is about. But it's a really good show. It starts out like very light, but by season 3, I was like sobbing in so many of the episodes. So I'd say stick with it. It starts out slow. It's more of a comedy, and then it becomes a lot more than just a comedy as it goes on. Now we have Makes You Think. Number 1, Death Note. Death Note makes you think about philosophy a lot, and what is right and what is wrong, and what does it mean to really be evil or good. And it's about this kid, his name's Light. He goes to school, he ends up with this notebook, and he can decide if anyone in the world dies by just writing their name in the notebook. And he decides he's going to take morality into his own hands, and he is going to start punishing people he thinks are not deserving of life. And that's a video I need to make about if you agree or not with Light's philosophy, but that's a light version of what the show's about. The reason he has this notebook is he's working with oh god, how do you say it? Is it Shinmigami? It's basically, I think in Japanese culture, it's a god of like death. So it's very interesting show. Next you have, this is totally different, Adam Ruins Everything. This makes you think about, especially if you live in America, American society. It teaches you about a lot of things and a lot of misconceptions using studies in science, and it's just a really interesting show. Next we have the show Russian Doll. If you liked Steins Gate or if you liked Russian Doll, I recommend either. Russian Doll kind of has that same vibe, but I didn't want to put it in sci-fi. But it's about it's kind of like Groundhog Day. It's about this person, and she keeps being put into the same day over and over again, and she doesn't know why, and she's trying to figure it out. Very interesting show. You get kind of the metaphor for Russian Doll. I binge watched that. It's a great show. Next is Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. This is another one like Adam Ruins Everything that talks about issues today. I won't get too into it here, but if you are wanting to learn more about journalism in a more in-depth way, or more about sort of like industries that maybe you didn't know about, like issues within an industry, or politics, which we won't get into on this channel, but you can watch it there. It's a great show. All right, now we are going on to high quality drama. I need some more tea. All right. Number 1, we have Erased. Great anime. It's about this guy who, for some reason, can time travel, kind of, and he ends up traveling back to his middle school days. There was this girl who was abducted and killed from his class, and he tries to go about solving the mystery and saving her life about why that happened. And one of my favorite shows for sure, and animes. It's great. Next, this is the only movies I'm putting in here because I'm trying to do shows or things you can watch for a while, but this is just the Studio Ghibli movies like collection, which is on HBO Max, but I'm sure you could watch it somewhere else if you wanted to buy them or something. But I still am working on watching all of them. I'd like to one day make a video of like ranking them or talking about or analyzing different ones, but yeah, they're great. They're great movies. So some are better than others, but so great. And honestly, it will depend on what you like. So I can't just recommend a specific movie to you right now without making a whole other video, since this video is probably going to already be like an hour long. So, but I will make one. Let me know and I will make one if you guys want it. Next, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. This is my favorite anime of all time as of now. It's interesting because I actually stopped watching episode 3 for a month, because episode 3, if you know what I'm talking about, was so traumatic for me. I couldn't handle it. But that's part of what made it such a great show. And the show covers so many topics that I'm passionate about, that I've talked about in other shows. Trying to keep this description short for you guys, so I won't get into it here. But it's about two brothers. They do alchemy and the laws of alchemy and the limits. And they try to save their mother through alchemy. And one boy loses his entire body, the other loses his arm. And they want to get those things back. So it's the journey and the story of these two boys. And it is so good. So good. It's so much more than that, but that's a brief overview. All right, next we have Blue Period. This is another one where I haven't finished the show yet, but I'm putting it in here because I just think it's phenomenal. It's not going to be a show for everyone, but I think if you are a creative or you're looking for just motivation about passion in life and following your passion, it's a great show. The manga, I've read the first volume. It's also great. I've heard great things about the rest of the manga. I just haven't got to it yet. Yeah, I've really enjoyed the show. I think it's less hyped up than some others, but I think it covers a lot of really great like self-growth topics. And I don't mean like a, cheesy self-growth book way. I mean in like a real way. Next we have Giri Haji. It's also called like Duty Shame. This is actually a live action Japanese show. I really enjoyed it. It's very unique because the show is mostly in Japanese, but there's English too, and it's made by, I think, it was made by like the British Broadcasting Company, I think. And it covers this guy, and he's like a cop, and his brother, who was in is it Yakuza, like a gang in Japan, has been found to be in I think England and the UK for sure. And so he's in London. He goes to London, the brother, to go find his brother and learn more about what's going on. But he has to deal, the reason it's called Duty Shame is he has to deal with like, do I do my duty as a cop and go after my own brother? Or do I deal with the shame of, not following my duty, but then I save my brother? There's a lot more to it as well, but really great show. If you're looking for something that's like, has a lot of Japanese influence, it has a lot of action and drama and mystery, but you're not looking for an anime right now, I think Giri Haji is a really, really good one, or Duty Shame. Next we have Unbelievable. This is a heavy one, but I think it's something that is good for people to watch. Definitely Unbelievable is about sexual assault and also these two detectives who go about figuring out who sexually assaulted this victim, and just it's about not believing sexual assault and the ramifications that come from that happening to someone. It's a really great show. So next is The Queen's Gambit. Love this show. This is about a female chess player in like the 50s, so it was a very male dominated game. And she wants to be a successful chess player. She's also it's not just about chess. She's orphaned from a very young age, and so she goes to this orphanage, and she has to deal with kind of growing up with chess really being her only comfort. And you see the ramifications of that. It's a really great show. Highly recommend. I've actually watched it twice. Next is Squid Game. I'm sure most of you have seen this, but if you haven't, I guess I could have put it in sci-fi, but I feel like so much of it's really about the characters that I had to put it in here. It's really talks about the issues with poverty and debt and capitalism, and it's about this guy who is in kind of a debt gambling spiral. He decides to join this game to make some money, and it is a very, he didn't really know what he signed up for, we'll just say. Great show. My favorite episode, if you're wondering and you have seen the show, without giving spoilers, I'll just say it's the marble episode. I thought it was brutal. Very brutal, but very psychological and very good. Next we have Euphoria. This was cool for me because like I said, I'm about to be 30. I haven't been a teenager for a while, but I like understanding what teenagers are going through and teenage issues, and I think Euphoria was cool to see how social media and everything has really evolved. Like, we had Facebook when I was in high school, but that was it, and it was a lot less pervasive, and there wasn't as much like live video, or, you know, people texted, but that was really the extent a lot of digital communication. So we had some of these issues, but it seems like they've really exploded a lot more with things becoming more accessible over time. And I thought that was really interesting about Euphoria. So I really liked it a lot. Next is Big Little Lies. Season 1 is the essential viewing to me. This covers a lot of heavy topics too. I guess that's why these are in drama. But it's great. You know, I think you might see the show and go, oh, it's about a bunch of moms, but it's about a lot more than that. It covers domestic violence issues and, you know, just lots of other issues. There's a mystery to it. It's a murder mystery. Somebody dies, and, you know, you want to know why, obviously. So there you go. Next we have Vanity Fair. This was a very cynical show, but it was fun at the same time. It's about this really horrible sociopathic girl. And she basically takes advantage of people, and it's set in like England in like the 1800s or something, but it was really well done. And the actress from Bates Motel or whatever, which I've seen a couple seasons of that, but I'm not putting it on the list, even though that is a good show. Maybe I should have. She's in it. It's really good. I highly recommend it. It's a cool period piece, but it's a much darker period piece than what they usually produce. It's a cool take. I don't like the main character, but that kind of makes it interesting. Next we have Mayor of Easttown. This is a great show. Kate Winslet is the main person, and I think she's a really good actress. And it's another sort of murder mystery, but it deals with a lot of sort of like middle class in America issues, and you know, it covers all the topics really well. And honestly, I didn't see the ending coming. I thought it was really great. It's about the detective, and this girl is murdered. A couple other girls are missing, and she has to figure out why. Really good show. All right. Whew, we got through the dramas. We are on to the high quality, historically inspired. So, more tea. All right, number 1, Vinland Saga. You want to hear about Vinland Saga? Check out my video. I will tell you it's really good, and it has a lot to do with Vikings, and it's about this cute boy who grows up in Iceland and his experiences, and yeah, watch my video if you want to learn more, because I think that explains it better. Next we have The Crown. This is a great show. Very interesting. Another one that won't be for everyone. It's a very slow-paced show, but I really enjoy it. It's really well made, and it's about the Queen of England and her story from when she was very, very young. And you know, she starts out being queen like right after World War II, and she's still queen today. as of this filming. So yeah, pretty fascinating stuff. So far there's 4 seasons, so we get all the way up through Diana, if you're into that. Next we have The Last Kingdom. Season 1 is essential viewing. I haven't watched. I watched part of season 2 and I wasn't as into it, but I didn't give it that much of a chance, so it could be good. But season 1 is really good. If you liked Finland Saga, check out The Last Kingdom. It's about a boy who is stolen. Well, he tries to fight, I guess, in this war where the Vikings are trying to like take over his family's settlement, and he ends up becoming a Viking. There you go. Next is The Great. This is fun. This one's a more comedic show. It's very satirical. It won't be for everyone. It's pretty, it can be a bit much at points, but it's really good. It's about Peter the Great, or I don't think he was actually the Great. It's about Peter, who was the husband of Catherine. She was like, ended up being queen of Russia. And she was married to this kind of incompetent guy. And it's about their relationship, and it's really good. And speaking of, next is Catherine the Great. So if you want something more like a parody, watch The Great. If you want a more of a drama and you want to see her older life, so The Great is when she's younger, like in her teens and 20s. Catherine the Great is when she's like much older and she's been through a lot more, and it's more of a drama, and it's also really good. Also about the same person, so but a different take. It's more about her relationship with her son, and kind of like how she's ruling her rule towards more the end. It's after she ends up killing her husband, we'll say. This isn't really a spoiler. Everyone pretty much knows this, I think, or you're supposed to know it. So The Great is before she kills her husband. Catherine the Great is after. There you go. Next is Gentleman Jack. This is a cool LGBTQ representation show that's a period piece, which I love because that's not really like very common. So it's about, based off a real life person, and this person who, she always dressed as like more masculine. She was, you know, like a lesbian, and it's like a love story between her and this other woman at the time. Obviously, people weren't very accepting during that time period. So it's a very interesting take on a period piece, and I really like it. Next is Rome. That's about Rome. And I haven't seen this one in a really long time, but I still wanted to mention it because I loved it and I remembered it. It has a cool vibe, and I really liked the intrigue and the drama at the time, and that's what I remember about it. Next is Chernobyl. This is a graphic one. This is one that you don't want to eat anytime you're watching this, but it's really good. It really goes into the politics of what happened at Chernobyl, not just the events. And it also explains the science to you, which is really cool, but it's kind of like a biopic drama, and it's so good. Highly recommend. John Adams, this is just kind of